to my veterans, I gotta give salute. Mafia will finally get to tell the truth. Yeah. Let them know it. Let them know it.
Hey everyone, this is Delaina with Zero Dark Thirsty, and I'm here with Mafia Made. Christoph has decided to come on and join us for an episode and giving us all the yummies. And yes, the stumbles, the road, the smooth, the bumpy, the whole path, the raw, the real, and probably some jokes in there somewhere. He's come on. I'm so excited. We're having Mafia Made here at Zero Dark Thirsty, and for you guys to kind of see the transition of that E5 and below service member getting out, and to see what that looks like for those of you who haven't done it yet, and maybe relatability for those of you who have. So welcome, Christoph.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and I've helped, thousands of people make the transition. So I think I do have some valuable insight into, things I've seen that have worked, not worked, you know, common misconceptions and things like that. And ironically, I actually did my transition terribly, which is why I'm so passionate about helping people with their transition, because I don't want them to have to deal with the same stress that I did.
No, absolutely. And I think that it definitely, it goes without saying the the differences of transition, like it should go without saying, but we can very much very quickly, with each other be like, oh yeah, it was fine for me. It was great. And it what we end up doing, which we don't realize that we're doing, is we're actually isolating not only ourselves, but we're isolating others from feeling that relatability to ourselves. So how long were you in?
I was a 6-year, one contract Navy nuke electrician's mate.
There you go. That's awesome. Navy nuke in the house. Um, so what made you decide to get out? Like what was that decision that led to that?
So funny enough, I come from a Navy family. We're 4 generations now of Navy sailors, all enlisted. I was very gung ho Navy when I first got in. I excelled in my A school and C schools. I mean, everything was going really well, and I actually wanted to star reenlist, but you couldn't star reenlist until you got to your ship or sub back then. So as soon as I got to my submarine, I wanted to reenlist, and I'll never forget this. One of the other petty officers in my division points to his Dodge Charger out in the parking lot, and he says, "That's what I bought with my reenlistment bonus. I'll give it to you right now if they'll let me out of here one day earlier." And like that really, hit home with me. And I was like, maybe I don't know what I don't know.
Mm,
So it's very interesting in the Navy, right? You're very much at the, choose your rate, choose your fate, but also the exact same rate can go to a different command and have a fully different experience. And the Navy nuclear community was kind of going through it at that time. If you've never heard of the Qualicost, it's interesting look up for you. But so that's ultimately why I did 6 years. I didn't necessarily love every moment of my time in the Navy, but it opened up every door that I've had since I've got out. So I like to say, I don't miss the circus, but I really do miss the clowns.
I love that. I love that. I miss the animals.
Yeah. And what are they in this situation? Was that the
Oh my
officers?
goodness. It's everyone else. Oh my gosh, there's so much I miss. But so let's kind of go into that transition. Because now you're on the outside looking in. Didn't it feel like kind of a small world, like this, like a small town sort of feel, the military, or especially even the Navy nuke? I mean, we were stationed at Kings Bay at one point down in St. Mary's, and it's very much a small world. And then you get on the outside of it and you're just like, it's almost like the Truman Show, right?
Right. And what is it? Like 1% of America is active duty, and then 1% of active duty is Navy nuclear. So it is a very small world. But as far as my transition went, I did it probably the worst you could do it, and I ended up with a job out of pure luck. Do you want me to jump into that little story?
Sure.
So because we were a seagoing command and we were very busy, they had me do the online version of TAPS. And if anybody listening to this has ever done corporate training, The online version of TAPS is basically 40 hours of corporate training where you're not learning a lot, you're not retaining very much at all. You're clicking through slides. Command has told you, hey, it's a 5-day program, but I need you done in 2 because we need you back here doing work, right? So I clicked through it all and I thought, hey, Chris Dove, you're a Navy nuke. You're so smart. You don't need this help. Like, you're just going to figure it out and you're going to be so marketable because one of the things with the nuclear Navy, right, when you get to A school, all your instructors, they want to find that extra motivation for you. And a lot of times they like to talk about, your post-military career options. And those post-military career options are very lucrative. They're very awesome. But you got to go through a lot to get there. So they like to dangle that.
Yeah,
And
so like I want to jump in on that. Like there's a lot of options for a Navy nuke that are out there. There's
especially
electricians,
now,
like there's a ton of availability of jobs. Like if you're a Navy nuke and you're struggling to find work,
call
it's
me. If you gave me 100
you
Navy
need to
nukes,
come talk to us because I
yeah,
promise you there's lots of opportunity.
if you gave me 100 Navy nukes today, I could get them all employed probably by the end of the month. Like
But
that's
yeah, if
how,
not sooner. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, between the two of us, I'd say by the end of next week,
yeah. Give us a
you'd at
business week
least
and,
have
and let us
interviews.
work for real. And a little off topic, but with the surge of data centers, the renaissance of nuclear power, the building of more natural gas and
Renaissance
other
of
power
nuclear
plants,
power, love that. Yep.
yeah. So it's
There's
it's
a
getting
huge
crazy.
contract locally in Tennessee that they're going to be building. They're going to be putting more money back into nuke power. Yep.
Yeah, so Tennessee's big on the nuclear fuel supply chain. I mean, I know you have Oak Ridge National Lab, correct? Yeah. It's very interesting. We've got the A plant here in Ohio that does the uranium enrichment,
Hmm.
and it's been talked about closing several times, and now they're ramping it up, investing in it, modernizing it, and putting a lot of money into that project. So you really are seeing a resurgence. So that's what I was banking on was, hey, when I get out, people are gonna beg me to come work for them, right? And in 2015, it was not necessarily that way.
An economy
Right, and I'll tell you,
and
I wanted
administration.
to work in data centers
I know
in
it.
2015 when I got out, but really the only place I could find the opportunities was in Northern Virginia, the data center capital of the world. I don't know that there was a single data center in where I wanted to go, right? So I came from Ohio. I wanted to get back to Ohio, and now today there's 217 data center projects here in Ohio. So like, think about that 10-year gap. But back to the transition. I thought, hey, I'm going to click through this. I'm going to go back to work and like the jobs are just going to come. I've got a resume that says Navy nuke on it, right? Little did I know, like almost every common thing that about resumes and job hunting, I didn't know at the time. So like tailoring your resume, no thank you. Translating any of the acronyms to something a civilian might know, nah, didn't bother with that. And I legitimately it came up to 3 days before I started my terminal leave, and I still had 0 interviews. Not 0 job offers, not 0 jobs, 0 interviews.
So let's just tap on that real quick. So we talk about this and the civil are in transition a lot is that when you're in, and we kind of went over it, we could say we could get Navy nukes 100 jobs or 100 Navy nukes something by the end of the month. But in reality, you still have to be one going to an area that can employ you. So when we say we can get you a job, it doesn't that necessarily mean it's the location you want to live in.
Yeah, rural Arkansas has a few less opportunities.
So there's a lot of places where it's not going to be as beneficial and you're not going to be utilizing that part. And if you're not doing your resume correctly, if you're not seeking correctly in the area that you live in and understand how your skills are applicable to that area and what they hire for, it's doing you nothing. You're not going to get anything, right?
Well, you just nailed it. That is the like biggest time sink for me is just educating veterans on what they are qualified for. And don't get me wrong, the job market is incredibly broken and job descriptions are getting a little better as time goes on, but when I got out, I would read 7 pages of a job description with 34 bullet points of skills they wanted, and I would think to myself, well, I don't have all of those. Maybe I shouldn't apply, right? I had no idea that one, they were really only looking for like maybe 10 of those were actual deal breakers. Everything else was a nice to have, right? And then I didn't realize that, I should apply anyway, because the worst thing that could happen is they say no. So like, you're a veteran, you're used to excelling, and you do have an innate fear of rejection. Like, go ahead.
But there's a silver lining. Hold on. So let's talk about that silver lining by applying anyways.
Right.
You get into their system.
I
So the
didn't know
getting
that
into
back
their
then.
system is huge. There's two things that come from that. One, recruiters source all the time within their own internal system. It's a
Yes.
real thing. It is, I promise you, I've done it myself. I've seen other recruiters do it. The other thing is that allows you to receive their news, their sort of information. So what people don't understand at ATS, when we go to post direct, there's the option to notify. It'll say there's 32 candidates in the system that also could qualify for this position. Would you like to notify? We always say yes.
Right, because
So when you
it
get
would
that
do our
email
job
that
for us.
says, tell them when you get the email, now you know there's a job posted. Yep.
Yeah, and like following companies' LinkedIn pages, signing up for the alerts on their website, like there's a million different ways to do the job search, but I definitely was doing it wrong. So I end up, 3 days before terminal leave, no job prospects. I'm walking out of the Nex on Naval Station Norfolk, and this random guy just says, "Hey, okay, hey man, what's going on?" He says, I'm Ernest Burson. I work at Orion Talent, and we're hosting a military hiring conference. Would you be interested? I said, 3 days until I need a job. This guy has absolutely I will. Where do I sign up? Right. So we're literally in Norfolk, Virginia. He has a hiring conference coming up that weekend in Columbus, Ohio. Orion Talent actually paid for my flight to Columbus. And once they do that for you, right, they're very invested in you getting placed, because now they've invested in you, right? And they need that fee to see their return on investment. So I get to the conference, I'm in my suit, I've got my nice suit jacket. Back in 2015, I was in that rock solid military shape. I was looking good, I was feeling good. Nothing was going to stop me now, Delaina. How a military hiring conference works, this is not a job fair, this is a hiring conference, right? There's a whole full first day of prep. And then on that second day, you get set up with direct one-on-one interviews with real job opportunities. And I had 3 interviews scheduled in that morning between 8 a.m. and noon. And I had 3 interviews scheduled between noon and like 4 or 5 o'clock, right? I do my first 3 interviews, and I don't even know how I'm doing, but it feels pretty good, right? And I stop to get some lunch that they're providing, and same guy comes up to me. Hey, I'm like, hey man, what's going on? I'm having a great time. He's like, so you're actually the last ranked candidate on every employer's grading sheet so far, and that doesn't usually happen for a Navy nuke. What are you doing wrong? And it's funny because, like, you think just be as honest and transparent as you possibly can in that job interview. Like the military, especially the nuclear program, teaches you, honesty, integrity, transparency, but that's not really what employers necessarily want to hear, right? So,
They want to hear honesty, but it's not. The thing that I always hear is, well, I can't do that, but I can, oh, well, I probably could, I could. There's a lot of negative and self-doubt that comes through the way that they respond. So in their head, well, I'm just being honest,
mm-hmm,
but it's the way that you're telling it
right.
too. Like, I could
Corporate
tell you
speak
the
is
glass
much
is half
different from.
empty and I'm just being honest, or I could say that the glass is half full and I'm still just being honest, right?
Yes, and like corporate speak is so much different than military speak, that even just you saying the exact same thing a different way can be a detriment to you. So he gave me some pro tips, gave me a little quick mock interview, 10 minutes long, sent me back on my way. 3 afternoon interviews. I'm the number 1 ranked candidate for 2 companies, second ranked candidate for the third. I ended up getting 3 different job offers to choose from, and everything worked out. Without those dominoes falling for me, because I didn't find those dominoes and set them up, I got lucky that I walked, into the right situation and ended up accepting a job. Otherwise, I had honestly just, done like a lot of people do. And they're like, if it doesn't work out, I've always got my GI Bill, right? I always wanted to go back to college. Why wouldn't I do that? So I did everything absolutely the worst way. And then even when it came down to the job opportunities, I didn't know that I could leverage 3 different offers against each other because I actually really wanted to work for one company, but they only offered 2 weeks of vacation a year, and I ended up taking a less desirable job because I had 4 weeks of vacation and the same pay.
Because you didn't understand how civilian PTO works.
Yeah, I had no idea it was negotiable. I thought it was like the military where, "Hey, this is set in stone. This is your pay. This is your vacation."
Well, and then you didn't a lot of times you guys don't realize, like, civilian PTO and military PTO isn't the same. Military PTO is calendar days. Civilian PTO is in office business days, not just business days,
Don't
in
get me started on
office
getting charged for
business
leave for
days.
weekends. Oh
And
my
we
god.
don't care how far away from the base you go to for
Right.
your vacation or all the things. We don't care about that. You can fly to France and back on a weekend.
Yeah,
Deuces.
as long as you don't miss your deadlines at work, you're good.
Yeah, as long as you're in the office when you're supposed to be, heck, you give a flute toot. So, and that's where understanding that's kind of huge because that led to you taking a different offer just by having that misunderstanding of how PTO works.
And it changes the trajectory of my whole life, right? Because had I taken that other opportunity, I would have lived in a different city. I would have had a traveling role and, my entire life would have been different. But I didn't even try to negotiate on like the base hourly rate. I accepted exactly what they gave me and I said, "Thank you very much." And then, I don't know that you can do more things wrong. And then it was really funny to me. I did that job successfully for 2 years. I was great at it. And then for the first time ever, a recruiter reached out to me, like a headhunter, and headhunted me away from a $5 billion corporation to go work at a startup. And that's when like I really started to realize all the dumb things I'd been doing in the job search. And like my first civilian job search, like really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I was like, what? Like, how come nobody tells you this, right? It's almost like you're playing a game, but you don't get the rule book. We know the rule book now, but like sailors coming out don't necessarily get the full rule book on the civilian job market and all the nuances that go with it. So like once I did that and I took that second job, I was like, I need to tell some people about this. And a lot of my friends that I went through the Navy nuclear program with that had star re-enlisted, right, they're coming up on their 8-year mark. Now they're starting to make their transition. And I'm hitting them up because no one ever did that for me. There was no one that left our boat that ever came back to say, "Hey guys, this is what it's like on the other side," or "Hey, this is how I had a successful transition," right? They've got so much going on that they're only looking through the windshield. They're not looking in the rear view mirror. And then, the next person comes up the transition, they make all the same mistakes, get no feedback back to the boat. And it's just, a very cyclical cycle. And it's to the detriment of us all.
Absolutely. That's one thing, I've said it in other ones is if you want advice on the civilian sector, don't go to somebody who's active duty because they
And
have
it's
no
funny that we
idea.
do though, right? Because
And
they
they're
cheat.
using, well, my buddy got a job just like that. And he didn't have any problems and blah blah. And notice the difference in voice and the way that I'm acting because I mean, honestly, they could paint that as a cartoon character in my eyes. Like they have no idea they didn't know what that person went through, who that person was mentored by, if they were mentored, what their skills were, clearance, what the economy was at the time. There are so many layers when it comes into someone transitioning successfully. And they're not going to give you all of that. They're going to give you what sounds good in the moment. Well, this happened for them, so it must be you. And the issue with that is then it's isolating the service member because they don't realize that there's so many other things and resources and mentorship and there's so much more going on that they need to see themselves into that it actually puts them on this negative path. And just for a sidestep, we all know that senior leadership use that as a scare tactic.
Well, it sounds like you should re-enlist.
Let's just say that real quick. That's exactly what they say. Man,
So
you hadn't found a job yet? Gosh, you got
you hit
babies
on
to
one of the most
feed
common
and
misconceptions that I deal with, Delaina. And it's, when they hear Johnny got 150K his first day out. And it's like, okay, what city does Johnny live in? Oh, he's living in San Francisco? Well, 150 doesn't really go a long way in San Francisco. I don't think your job in rural Arkansas is quite going to pay that, right? Or like for a lot of people in the nuclear community, we get out and we go to a nuclear power plant. We have a, a rotating shift schedule, a ton of overtime. Work-life balance is almost as bad as it is in the military, but you do make a ton of money, right? So like people don't weigh that. They hear the numbers and they don't ask like, okay, well, what are the things that you're giving up for that higher earning, or how did you land it, right? Just like you said, what kind of mentorship or certifications or studying or preparation did you do in order to land this job? They don't hear that. They hear, well, and then, you talk to the next guy that's coming out and he's like, okay, I need at least a minimum of 150K. And it's like, all right, tell me what in your qualifications, qualifies you for that level of job right now. And don't get me wrong, it happens. There's tons of veterans that land very golden opportunities on the way out. But those are more exceptions than the rule, right? So it's very hard to judge your market value. And that's why talking to people like us in the civilian world, like, most of us know our niche and our vertical. And if somebody's coming into our industry, we can look at their resume and give them a ballpark figure on, hey, this is probably the range that you're going to be looking at in this industry for these roles. But they don't want to hear that, right? They want to hear six figures or more. They want to hear, life's going to be better outside of the Navy. I'm giving up all this stability and security of my military contract. Like it's got to be worth it. And people fall into that trap all the time. They pigeonhole themselves to rural Arkansas. I know I keep picking on Arkansas, but like, that matters a lot. If you have very strict location requirements, you have to realize that's going to limit your number of opportunities. And I don't hate on anyone for that. You just got done serving your country. You're at the mercy of where Uncle Sam wanted you to go. I want you to choose where to live. I want you to get back close to your friends and family. But if you're prioritizing your location in your job search, then you have to sort of give some leeway on the other things.
No, absolutely. And I agree with that. I think that it's there's so much there, and it's really looking within. And I'm going to kind of go down a different path. We were a little bit on this before, but look at different areas, when you're transitioning. I know with you, like kind of go into that. Like you could have just gone home. There's options on where you could have gone after transition, right? Like, so what made you pick where you are?
Honestly, my kids were back in Southern Ohio already, so my family sort of transitioned a little bit before me, let me wrap up everything. And this isn't that uncommon in the military transition, right? You know where you want to go, but it's very hard to find housing or plan around a job that you don't have yet. And like, you don't want to commit to a location and get a lease or a mortgage and then, no job prospects and you end up moving, 2 hours away or whatever the case may be. So yeah, waiting until the last moment, I was very fortunate that my family had already moved back home. They were already living with family and waiting for me to come join them. And that's what really pigeonholed me into Ohio. But, in hindsight, it did end up working out for me, but I can see, a million different scenarios where it didn't work out for me.
No, absolutely. And that it's kind of looking at that sort of, I always tell everybody, they're just like, oh, well, I want to go home. It's either going to going back to the hometown where the active duty member is from, or going back to the hometown where the spouse is from, because they're not always the same, right? And so I always tell people, I'm like, you need to look about 3 hours from there. So take the where it is you're looking at and then branch out like a spider web, 3 hours. Because you can still be home without being home. So then that way you can broaden your employable market. So you're just like, well, I can't find a job in Cloverville, Texas. I don't even know if that's a real place. But, you're looking all the way out in the boonies, and it's just like, well, yeah, because you're looking literally just in Cloverville. What if you live 3 hours from there? What if you lived a little closer to Austin, or you can have your house, if there's a place in between, your work or your hometown, and you could situate your house in between and then have your job on this side. So that way you're not commuting so far and you can have a job, but then you're not so far from grandma and grandpa at the same time. Like pull some logistics into it. You don't have to live and be your parents' next door neighbor. You can just go close enough where you can be there on the weekends.
And I do think something that I realized later, we don't realize how much has changed back where we were from, right? And we expect to kind of move back and pick up where we left off. But and I think a lot of military members, end up disappointed in that regard, right? Like I thought all my problems were going to be solved by moving back closer to my friends and family, and then they get back and they realize everyone else has their own life and own things going on, you
They
know.
have a friend group. They have a lot going on. Yeah.
And like one of my favorite things in my military service was when I came back home to visit because it was so seldom, people planned around being able to see me, right? When you move back permanently, nobody's planned, like there's no welcome home party in most instances. Most people aren't like, going out of their way to come see you because now you're back permanently, and it just feels different, and it's not always what people expect. I always like to be sensitive to their needs, and them moving back close to family, because I think your support network is a very valuable part of your life. And for us as recruiters, if I know you have family and friends in the area, I know that you're much more likely to stick at that job than if you're moving to the area just for that job, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but yeah, I've seen a lot of people move back home and they realize, okay, living right next door to my parents isn't the dream life that I thought it was. Or maybe I do want an hour of separation between me and my in-laws, things like that. It's a huge change of pace for them. They spent most of their time, and especially if they married someone during their service, right? Now they're bringing them back into that community, and we expect things to very much be similar to when we left, but a lot of times the world has passed us by.
Absolutely. And that's where you can kind of create. So let's refocus, and go to finding your mission, finding your new mission. Because, something that you had told me that you're into, which is you coach sports,
I
right?
did.
Yeah. So you found something to kind of put your focus back into, because you're not getting those calls at 2 a.m. because Johnny, got a DUI or whatever. You're not having that anymore. And one of the biggest things that I really want to push out there to folks is you're not going to automatically just be given friends. Civilians don't do that. Like, you're not the same age bracket in the civilian sector as you are in the military. You're going to get into a job and one of your coworkers is going to be 10 years older than you. Another coworker is going to be 5 years younger than you. Another coworker is waiting on retirement to ring that bell. Like, their ages are going to be all over the place. So it's definitely, you can have people younger than you bossing you around. They're
Yeah.
not bossing you around, but they might be your manager. So there's so much complexity and diversity there. And you're not, this was rough for me, is finding a friend group, because I was expecting when I started my job, and every other job I've ever had, we were in a military town. So all the other people I worked with were military spouses, or veterans. So we'd get together and shoot squirrel, we'd have barbecues, and you could expect that. But man, was it a rude awakening when we got to Lincoln, Nebraska, and nobody hangs out with each other. Like, they have their own thing. And so I was like, well, this is usually how I make friends.
Yes.
It's my coworkers
And
and my husband's coworkers.
and it is definitely weird to, be in charge of a reactor on a submarine and be trusted to, safely operate it. And then, you get to the civilian world and your manager is a 25-year-old that hasn't really done a lot. They never left their town, or whatever the case may be. And now you're taking orders from them. So it is definitely a recalibration.
No, absolutely. I think that it definitely is. Like, one of the sore spots, I didn't find it, and he didn't find it either when we were in Lincoln, was that refocus of the mission. We need something to tie us down besides just work. That's all we did was work, and come home. And then COVID. And then I never left my house. I was just there day in and day out, which made it even worse. So then I didn't have a friend group to chitty chat with, and it really just weighed. It made, weighed on me a lot. And I will say now, like, I'm out there. Like, now I want to push to people, like, talk to people, like, go volunteer at the fire department, Go volunteer with Little League, find, even if you don't have kids that young, some of us, I mean, mine's 17, he could care less about that stuff. He's not a sports in a playing sports way. We're sports in a attending and collecting baseball cards way. So at some point, I feel like we're going to be fantasy football way, but we haven't gotten there yet. But, but he doesn't play, so there's not that outlet, even through my kid, to find something to do. So, join something. I know church gets used, but there's other things out there. There's the VFW. There's a lot of associations. There's things that need help. You guys love to be asked, to help with something. You can move heavy things. People need people to do that. What if you're in software development? What if you're in IT? Yeah, I mean, tell me there's not a church out there that doesn't have a soundboard that probably needs a little help. You could find ways to be needed and to refocus that mission
And
and
I do feel
to,
like when they fail to make that network adjustment that,
yeah.
it helps the imposter syndrome creep in. Do people even like me? Am I not good at my job? Like, all of these questions start getting asked. And like, people really underestimate the recalibration that goes into, you know, when you're in the military, you have the plan of the day, you have the uniform of the day, you know what you're supposed to be doing basically every hour of the day, you know what clothes you're supposed to be wearing, and you know where you have to live because the government tells you and all these things. And now you've got 100 different choices to make, each one of them with life altering repercussions. And a lot of times they get paralysis by analysis. You get so afraid to make the wrong choice that you're afraid to make any choice at all.
Yes, yes, yes. I will say I've gone through that myself. Just that paralysis of saying, now I don't want to go anywhere. Now I don't want to, and you start to self isolate. That's where depression kicks in, and things like that. It's like, well, I don't want to screw up, so I'm not going to bother.
Yep.
Especially when you've gone through so much of pros and cons of your life, and staying relevant, you can pick up rank. So it definitely has a hindrance. So what sort of advice, based on your own, kind of what you went through, what sort of things would you put out there as like kind of a final word?
Number one, start a year before you need to transition, right? That's when you should be networking. That's when you should be getting your LinkedIn set up. That's when you should start your informational interviews. I think a lot of us, we're so busy that we wait until that final 6 months or 3 months, or in my case, I waited until like the last 3 weeks thinking, I would interview, they would give me a job offer, and then I would have a start date that still worked, right? 3 weeks is plenty of time. That's not how things really work, right? You might not even get your first interview in that 3 weeks realistically. So starting a year out is the number one thing that I could leave for every veteran. And then you leverage LinkedIn. People underestimate the power of LinkedIn.
What would you have to say for our Mafia Made for the E5s and below?
Leverage your other E5s that you met in the military. Any person that you know that got out before you, call them. They're gonna want to talk to you, right? Veterans love to talk to people about their time. And if anybody from any time in my military experience called me, I'm gonna talk to them. And I always give them the thumb rule: ask people for 10 minutes of their time. Don't ask them for 30. Don't ask them for an hour. Ask them for 10 minutes. Get all the info you can in that 10 minutes. And if the conversation's going well, they're probably going to go over 10 minutes with you, right? But if I say, hey, let's schedule a meeting for 30 minutes, and somebody has to chunk that out of their busy schedule, it seems a lot harder to fit somebody in for 30 than it does 10. But a lot of times those 10-minute conversations end up going 15, 20, 30 minutes anyway.
Wow. I agree with that. Well, this is Mafia Made here at Zero Dark Thirsty. But I'm definitely grateful for Chris jumping on and us getting this recording done. There's going to be so many more to come of recordings for Mafia Made. So episodes galore are coming. So definitely stay tuned. And here on Zero Dark Thirsty, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. All of Chris's information is going to be in the description. Make sure you're clicking the links below. Send him a connection request. And take a look at what he's got going on. And as always, you're always welcome to connect with me and reach out. When we're talking about offers, I just want to plug this real quick. If you are in an offer, if you have received an offer and you don't know what to do, send me a message on LinkedIn. Offer, 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 big bold caps, all caps letters, so that way it stops me what I'm doing, I will call you. Okay. We will go through that offer. I know Chris would do the same thing. We'll go through the offer with you to make sure you're making the right decision. And we'll ask you those questions and maybe explain some things, provide some transparency. I mean, we're recruiters, we've been doing this for a long time. So I'm happy to do that. Make sure you connect with us here at Zero Dark Thirsty on LinkedIn. This is Mafia Made, and I will see you guys later. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is what we do. Logistics wins wars, it ain't no dispute. Shout out to my veterans, I gotta give salute. E Mafia will finally get to tell the truth. Yeah.